know, I had 3 younger brothers, and I was the boss of them. And then I was in the Navy, I was a Navy nurse, and so there was men all over the place. And so it's very comfortable for me to be here, plus I know probably 98% of you. So, but anyway, thank you for inviting me. Roy did say that he was, wanted me to talk about different types of grief. I actually prepared for grief from death, which is what we do here in our grief support. But I don't see that there's any problem with applying some of these principles to any other losses that can occur in your life. Whether it's a loss of a relationship, a loss of a job, a loss of a financial loss. I mean, a lot of things will cause the grief process to kick into gear. So what I'm going to do is go through, there's some papers on your table there, and you can refer to that. There's not one for everybody because I'm going to run out of paper at home. But I just wanted to start with the idea that there's many factors that impact grieving. And sometimes we're not aware of this. The culture and your spirituality, your family, how you grew up, what you witnessed, how you saw other people grieve. Some people realize that family members died and nobody talked about it. It was just hush hush. And as a child, you didn't get to go to the funeral. And so there's all kinds of different experiences you would have. Your personality, your temperament, what's going on with you at the time, whether you're a man or a woman. Men, and this is not, down the line, men and women, but men tend to be more what we call instructional or instrumental. They do something. There was one story of a man whose daughter died in a car accident, and he ended up going and was repairing the fence that she knocked down with the car. I mean, that kind of thing. Whereas women tend to be more intuitive and they're more expressive of their feelings. Men always feel comfortable with that, and then again, that's a societal factor. Little boys don't cry, men don't cry. You've got to tough it up and not allow anything to take over. So these things kind of carry through, especially in the U.S. It's starting to get better, but the U.S. has a real strange idea about grief. You just don't do it. You just leave it alone. The type of death and how it occurred, what the relationship was with the person, and then other previous losses you had. And then there's also disenfranchised grief, where society frowns on the type of relationship, whether it was a situation where it was a suicide, died from AIDS, LGBTQ, all kinds of things like that people don't accept, and so they just sort of keep it away. So those are some of the factors. And the healing pathway is right on here. This is one model that's used. The reality of the loss, the disorganization of the shock, the disorganization that occurs in your life, and then the process of reorganizing. So that's kind of the model that I'm using today. My first encounter with deep grief occurred 51 years ago when my brother died of cancer, 2 months after he was diagnosed. He was 26, I was 28. He'd been a Marine in Vietnam, probably had to do with Agent Orange, we don't know. But we were very close. He was next in line to me. And it hit me really hard. But one of the things my mother said the evening after the funeral was, God gave him to me for a while, and now I have to give him back. And the faith my mother shared with me that evening, and many other times throughout her life, has sustained me through the deaths of another brother, my father, a dear friend, my mother, my aunt, and many others. And that's why I do this. I've had a lot of experience, and it's just something that, and as a nurse, I was, dealt with it too. I was in hospice and stuff. So anyway, As Catholics, we believe that after death we'll spend eternity with God. But that doesn't immediately allow us to skip over the grief, the pain, the sadness, the shock, the anger, the guilt, all the feelings that can occur when you lose someone. And there's a list on the table, maybe one or two lists about feelings. So if you're not sure what some of the feelings you experience, take a look. They have a description of them. There's 2 sides, 4 pages. So there's a lot of feelings that can happen. William Morton is a psychologist who has provided grief counseling to many. He's done research and the effect on the effect of grief to families and individuals. And he's come up with 4 tasks that have to do with getting through grief. And it's important that these tasks be worked through, and they all don't happen at the same time. You can jump back and forth. But the first task is to accept the reality of the loss. And, there's usually numbness, shock, and sometimes it's hard to realize that this actually happened. And I know that full emotional acceptance may take longer than the intellectual acceptance. And I'm going to read from Psalm 56. Where is it? Have mercy on me, God, for I am treated harshly. Attackers press me all the day. The attackers are those feelings and everything that's going on. My foes treat me harshly all day. Yes, many are my attackers. And I'm on the wrong one. I'm sorry. Here we go. God is our refuge and our strength, and ever-present help in distress. Thus we do not fear, though earth be shaken and mountains quake to the depths of the sea. Though its waters rage and foam and mountains totter at its surging, the Lord of hosts is with us. Our stronghold is the God of Jacob. Streams of the river gladden the city of God, the holy dwelling of the Most High. God is in its midst. It shall not be shaken. God will help it at break of day. Though nations rage and kingdoms totter, God's voice thunders and the earth trembles. The Lord of hosts is with us. Our stronghold is the God of Jacob. Come and see the works of the Lord, who has done fearsome deeds on earth, who stops wars to the ends of the earth, breaks the bow, splinters the spear, and burns the shields with fire, who says, "Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations, exalted on earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. Our stronghold is the God of Jacob." You remember how the apostles were at a loss when Jesus died? They gathered together, afraid. They didn't know what was going to happen next, whether they'd be taken away and crucified. And this is something that we can experience ourselves. We're afraid. We don't know what's happened. It's, what am I going to be next? And I remember that whole idea of is this real? When at the funeral reception for my mother, my family and I were at the restaurant. We were setting up chairs around the table. And I said, "Well, where's Mom going to sit?" I mean, just out of the blue, where's Mom going to sit? Or if you had some interesting news, you would always tell your wife or your husband and call out to her before realizing she isn't there. Or when you start to make a phone call to a friend who has recently died, because all these things that are part of your life are not there anymore, and it's a shock. The shock that can occur after death does allow us to function on automatic and do what needs to be done, such as getting through the funeral, taking care of paperwork, doing the business that has to be taken care of. And then after that's all done, things start to affect you more. So the second task is to work through the pain of grief. And this is feeling your feelings. It makes it necessary to acknowledge and work through the pain, or it will manifest itself through some other symptoms or other form of aberrant behavior. And some people think, oh, this is counterintuitive. Most people would rather deny their feelings, distract themselves, stuff their feelings, and not experience the full weight of anything uncomfortable. This is the part of the healing process, is part of that disorganization. You may be yearning or searching for your loved one, which may be an effort to return to things as they once were, but the past is no longer available as it once was. And this is from John 11, 31 to 32 to 36. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Lazarus. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her weeping, he became perturbed and deeply troubled, and said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Sir, come and see. And Jesus wept. If Jesus, who is our God, can cry, then we can cry. We were created to cry. We have tears, and this has been proven under a microscope. The crystals in the tears of someone who's crying from grief are different from the crystals of tears that occur when you have irritation in your eye or you're chopping onions. They are different. So they're there for a reason. I couldn't tell you all the chemical stuff, even though I'm a nurse. So it's important to realize that when you're going through grief, Jesus went through this. And so it's just really good to cry. And I was thinking of one of your homilies, or one of the Gospels, where when the seed falls on good soil, it will have to die and then be reborn. But it has to be watered. And if the seed of grief is in your heart, and if you want it to die, come forth, and then blossom and be done with, the tears will water that. I mean, it just came to me one time. I was just thinking. So the tears are good. Let's see. And I have a bunch of handouts on the table outside the room, so I can do that. But there's Richard Rohr. I know some of you get his daily meditations. I get them. And he had one out, The Universal Need to Grieve. And in this one, he refers to Saint Ephraim, the Syrian from 303 to 373. He's really old. He considered tears to be sacramental signs of divine mercy. He instructs, give God weeping and increase the tears in your eyes. Through your tears and God's goodness, the soul which has been dead will be restored. The weeping mode is a different way of being in the world. And sometimes we have to cry for a very long time before we get it all out and we get to where we can be transformed or changed by the grief. Tears come when we realize we can't fix and we can't change reality. The situation is absurd, it's unjust, it's wrong. She should not have died. He should not have died. How could this happen? Only when we are led to the edges of our own resources are we finally free to move to the weeping mode. As a nurse, I always have nursing type metaphors. And so a wound that is deep, such as grief, has to heal from the inside out. And if you cover it over or sew it up before it can fill in from the inside out, it can become infected and much more difficult to heal. It's a real mess. That's where abscesses come from. When Jesus suffered the agony in the garden the night before he was crucified, his fear and sorrow and distress overcame him, and he asked his Father to take away what was to happen, but only if it was God's will. Another. Then going out, he went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. When he arrived at the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not undergo the test." After withdrawing about a stone's throw and kneeling, he prayed, saying, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup away from me. Still, not my will, but yours be done." He knew what was going to happen, and he was scared. He didn't want to go there. To strengthen him, an angel from heaven appeared. He was in such agony, and he prayed so fervently that his sweat became like drops of blood falling on the ground. So I guess I would say, if Jesus was like this, why not us? There's no reason why we can't go through that in order to get healed. Jesus knows what it's like for us in our suffering and despair. He's always with us. Though we may feel abandoned in our grief, continued prayer and time spent with Jesus in silence can eventually allow us to feel his overwhelming love and compassion and give us the courage to face another day without our loved one. Task 3, adjust to the environment where the deceased is missing. This is where you start to reorganize and figure out what your life is going to be like now without that person. Reorganizing one's life without the deceased depends on the nature of the relationship and the role with the deceased. This process is associated with the reorganization. And I have this other, you'll have to excuse me, Father, but this is a book called Psalms for Praying. She takes the Psalms and gets all that stuff that's in there about the fighting and the armies and all that, and puts it into a little bit more of a gentle, but it's the same idea. Deliver me, O giver of breath and life, from the fears that beset me. Help me confront the inner shadows that hold me in bondage, like a prisoner who knows not freedom. They distract me from all that I yearn to be and hinder the awakening of hidden gifts that I long to share with others. For I desire to be a channel of peace, to reflect the beauty of creation. Oh, that I might manifest your love to all whom I meet and mirror your mercy and justice. Guide me, O beloved, that I may become spiritually mature. Love me into new life. For are we not called to make love conscious in our lives? To divinize the earth with heavenly splendor? Reawaken my sense of wonder that I may childlike be, that I might flow in harmony with the universe and be a bearer of integrity. I know that you stand beside those who suffer, and you are the light of those imprisoned in darkness. Surely you will guide us into the new dawn, that we may live as co-creators with you. If your spouse has died, you find yourself having to do those things that he or she did, and you don't know how to do. My husband, Phil, has been we're trying to plan ahead, working with me for months, maybe years now, on paying the bills his way. The CPA way. Between Quicken and checkbook and this and that, and reconciling. I made an Irish song. jobs to go for him. We both have lived on our own, but after nearly 35 years together, we've forgotten some things. But that's the idea, is this time when you're trying to get adjusted, and who do I call for the roof, and what do I do about the air conditioner units out now? No, the things that each one kind of have their own, responsibilities for. This may be a time also when being around other people is difficult. You want to be alone. It's important where to go for support. Who are the friends that will listen and not tell you you should be over this by now? 6 weeks after. You should be feeling fine. What are you still crying for? The average now, I think they say, is about 5 years to get through. So that means it's a little less for some and a little more for others. So I always tell people, don't put a date on when this is going to be done. You just let yourself go through the process, and then over time, the waves of distress and despair and sorrow come less often, and they're not as high. Like when you're at the beach and you're standing in the sand and the waves are coming and you feel pretty steady, then you get a big wave and it knocks you over. It's the same with grief. It just comes and goes, but little by little, it will ease off. And you're always going to feel miss this person. It's not like it just disappears and everything's fine, happy, go lucky. But it is different, and it takes time. Think of how the apostles were lost when Jesus was no longer with them. They huddled together, fearful of what was going to happen to them, grieving the loss of their precious friend and rabbi. Thomas's doubt that Jesus had been resurrected could be like the doubt we might feel when we're trying to navigate along the grief journey. And the despair that we'll manage without a loved one. But Jesus sent the Holy Spirit to them. The Spirit of Jesus is always with us. And in Matthew, come to me, all who labor, for my yoke is easy and my burden light. I'll never forget Father Bob at a funeral in the homily. He said, where that comes from is that back in the olden days, when they still probably do have someplace, the yoke has 2 oxen. They have a older, experienced one, and the other one might not be as experienced. But he had to follow what the older one did because they were yoked together. And so Jesus can be our yoke, our partner, when we're going through this, and allowing us to go forward and follow his lead. Task number 4 is moving forward, living without the deceased and moving on with life. This is when you start to reorganize, you start to pick up the pieces. It's like a puzzle. If you took a picture of yourself, well, that wouldn't work. But if you just took a piece of paper and you colored it different ways on this one side, and then you tore it up in all other ways, and then you turned it around and you put it back together again, or put it together how you wanted to. If you looked at the other side, it's probably going to be different. The color's going to be in different places, but it's still put together. So the idea is that your life will never be the same after a significant death, but there'll always be a way for you to continue on living and to continue on loving. And this is when you get into this new normal. My mouth is very dry. Should have taken this up before. So this is when we notice we're able to adjust in a way that allows for personal growth. It doesn't imply we forget, and I know that's one of the questions you have to discuss, but it's how you can live life fully, being grateful for the loved ones you have, for everything that you have, And then there could be a capacity for joy. And this is your, again, like I said, the new normal. It's a time for growing and learning more about yourself and your place in the world. Our worldview may change. Our goals may be different. We may find the strength to do new things or carry on with our life with a renewed sense of purpose. The feelings of grief and sadness lessen in intensity and frequency, as I said. Memories don't bring tears as much as joy. And looking at photographs is comforting versus, oh, I don't want to look at that, it's too difficult. So it's a gradual shift. But again, expressing your feelings and letting them come out is what changes them. Keeping them in and stuffing it, they won't change. They'll just always be there. The loss is always going to be there, but the grief lessens. I found it very helpful to attend Mass daily after my mother died because I felt close to her when I did. She attended Mass every day. And there's a bunch of us here that go every day. All of the loved ones we have lost remain in our hearts. Jesus is also in our heart. And receiving communion is a way to keep the nearness of our loved ones because they rest in Jesus. That's how to me, that's the communion of saints. Maybe it's not theologically expounded or anything, but Jesus is in each of us. We're in Jesus, so we're with everybody. And then I have to tell you, as I close here, and then there's first of all, just the help yourself, the sheet here, helping, that's an acronym I put together, so with ideas of how you can work on healing from loss in different ways. Because it affects you spiritually, physically, emotionally, and socially. So however, and again, your faith also, that's what we're talking about, but our faith can be challenged by grief. Just last week, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I was driving back from San Ramon down Norris Canyon Road to turn left on San Ramon Boulevard to get down to the freeway. And for some stupid reason, don't say anything, I pulled into the left turn lane at the last minute because they're doing a lot of stuff up there and I hadn't been there for a while. And then I saw this truck barreling down the highway. That truck, he couldn't stop, I guess. He went around into the oncoming lane, which was open, down and turned left. There was no traffic and kept going. And that could have, been pretty bad. And then as I made the left turn and was going down, I had this most incredible sense of the presence of my brother, the one who died. It was overwhelming. It was like he was sitting next to me. And where is it? I can't say your name. Streeter. When he was describing these things that occurred. That's the same experience I had he made sure that truck didn't hit me and that the guy that could have hit me didn't hit anybody and he went on his way. I swear, it was the most profound experience of his presence that I've ever felt. And he's been gone 51 years. And he rode a motorcycle across country to come out here, so he is pretty good with traffic, I guess you could say. But anyway, that to me is that feeling of my loved ones always with me, watching out for me. So my hope is that by presenting these 4 tasks and seeing how God is present throughout them, you'll find hope in despair, comfort in pain, joy in memories, love from others, and companionship with Jesus Christ. Do you have any questions? Are there any questions?
Not exactly a question. What I liked most about this presentation is the Christian perspective. We get a psychological look at grief and how we deal with it. But I really liked the way you presented it from a Christian point of view, how walking with Jesus and having the Lord at our side can truly heal us and bring peace, comfort, and joy. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. We have a small thank you from the men of faith. Phil can figure out how to deposit that in the right account. We do have some shared questions, as always. And also, if there are not enough of those worksheets on your table and you want one and there aren't enough, just see me or Steve or anyone of the core team and we'll email them to you so that if you want one of those sheets that Claire had and it's not available, we'll get it to you. So we'll spend about the next 25 minutes till 8:30 or so on the shared questions, so have at it.
Just so you know, there are handouts on the back table in the lounge on a lot of different topics, and there's also books there. Don't take the books, they're mine, to take a picture, because I'm sure you can get them on Amazon if there's anything there that interests you. Okay, thank you. And feel free to call me anytime if you have any questions or just need to talk, okay? That doesn't look very good. Yes, it does.
I love him.